Hello everyone, it's full review time, and today we're going to be looking at Broadsword, The Age of Chivalry, a turn-based game available on Steam. The game itself has a relatively short campaign, there's no difficulty settings, and there is no in-game save. They are probably the three main points of why I didn't really enjoy this game, but there is a lot of positives regarding the actual gameplay itself. So let's get into the game. What you're going to see in the background is the final mission on the campaign for the English army. Now, the gameplay is sound, the graphics are perfect, and the developer has spent a lot of time in terms of the AI movements and the overall concept of the game, and it runs really well. If you've played any type of civilization game, you may like this game as well. It's kind of a very simple, basic civilization game. You have your armies, you construct them. You have peasants. Those peasants are used to build buildings. However, you only have one settlement where your peasants come from. As you progress and take turns, you gather research points. You can use research points to improve the buildings that you can acquire, so you can increase the amount of farms that you have available, so you can increase the amount of food production, which eventually leads to an increased army size. Now, the main problem with the campaign is the fact that you don't really get to that point, especially this mission. This mission, you have your entire army available to you from the start, but if you look at the right at the top where your food is, you've got 21/7, which means that you cannot create any more troops. So this battle, even though you have a base, you can't progress on the base because you've got no peasants, and because you haven't got any peasants, that means you cannot create food, wood, mine storages, as well as get ready to create more army. Now, what that means is this is already a predetermined battle. You have to win the fight. Now, the fight itself, it took me a couple of attempts, which is good, but there's no difficulty settings, and once you figure out the basics of how your army works and using your hero's abilities, then the game becomes relatively simple. Now, the main problem that I had is that once I figured out this, the game became really boring, really predictable, and a bit too easy. I normally like a challenge in the game, and as you're aware, if you watched all my other reviews, I tend to push it as hard as I can to see if the difficulty is actually difficult. This game, for me, too easy. I didn't try the multiplayer aspects of it, I can see that working, but for the price of the game, £15 for a 2-hour campaign is a bit steep. Hopefully it shines in the multiplayer style, but obviously this is just a review of the overall gameplay, etc. So I didn't really look into the multiplayer aspects of it. If anybody has looked into the multiplayer aspects of it and it is good, then I will believe them. The game itself is fully polished. I like the concepts and the ideas. The campaigns are just lacking in complexity, and the majority of the time you don't really need to build anything. You can win the battle with the troops that you start with. So maybe if the developer made the troops that you started with a bit lower, so you just had your hero, for example, and you had to be forced to build, it may make it a bit more entertaining. One of the other problems as well is when it does come to places where you can build, all you have to do, because the maps are so tiny, is push your forces over the areas where the peasants from the enemy team will have to go, and you just take their peasants out, quickly build up a couple more troops, and you've won the game. Very simple strategies to win the game. The other features that this had, the cinematics, were very good for about 2 or 3 turns and then become repetitive and boring. The main issue with them is the fact that you don't have any direct control over them. It's just a show and tell of one army fighting another army with a very predictable moveset. I like the idea, but maybe if we had the ability to increase the amount of attack damage we could do or something like that by pressing certain buttons or something, it might make it a bit more entertaining and worthwhile watching it. I think the developer may have known that as well, since they gave you an option to turn it off in the settings. Another setting that you can turn off is the Fog of War. If you have the Fog of War on, the only disadvantage to it is the fact that you will not see where your resources are. That's it, you'd have to go off and find them. You can see everything the enemy does, because when you switch to the enemy's turn, it shows you them is in their Fog of War, and it shows you them playing out, so you can see exactly what they're doing. So if they were hidden, then I'd understand the concept of the Fog of War. It'd make more sense. But once you get through the game and you start realising what your hero abilities can do and how to run it, you can basically control how the gameplay goes out. Now in this one, your army is a bit lacking compared to the army that you're going up against. But if you just wait 5 or 6 days and get 20 points, you can give your hero, your commander of the battle, certain abilities which make sure that your army is impossible to kill. That's by giving them defensive features, healing them, etc, etc.
Yes, my lord.
So that's all I've got to really say about the negative. Oh, one more negative as well is the save functionality. After you complete each mission, the game auto-saves for you, so it remembers what missions you've done. However, you cannot save in-game. That's a bit of a letdown for me, because the fact that you can't save in-game is if you make one mistake, that you could be playing missions for around 2 hours if you wanted to really try out what you can do. But if you make a mistake, which costs you the game, you cannot load any previous game. Now that to me seems to be a major flaw with this game, especially since, like I said, you could be wasting 2 or 3 hours, and if you have to start all over again after that, it can become a bit annoying. Now as you can see, I'm taking out that army. Now all I have to do is take out this keep, and then it is GG. I have done, the game is complete. I would have preferred a lot more into it. I would have preferred the game to be a lot more challenging, but unfortunately it wasn't. The game itself and the concepts and the actual development behind it are spot on. I've got no issues with that. I would say that the price for this game is probably a bit steep for the amount of actual campaign gameplay involved in it. If there's no difficulty settings as well, it makes it quite mundane, but apart from that, the game itself is fine. Some minor bugs which may need resolving, and the game itself, it needs a prolonged campaign. So that's my review, guys. Hopefully it was informative and you enjoyed. Here is the credits. Like I like to show the credits on all games, just to give a couple of mentions to the guys behind this in terms of the development team. It is a really good game. They just need to expand on what they've currently got. The foundation is solid. We just need more in the campaign to make it a lot more enjoyable and for the actual price of the game to be more worthwhile. Hopefully you all enjoyed, and I'll see you on the next one.